Pride means to me it's an annual tradition of my tribe, my people getting together to celebrate who we are, where we've been, and where we're heading.
Pride means to me is a tremendous sense of community, who I belong with, who my friends are, who my family is.
Pride to me is gay Christmas.
You know, to me, Pride is not just one day a year or 1 week a year or 1 month a year. It's every day, and it lives within all of us.
Pride.
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 Stonewall is the emblematic event in modern lesbian and gay history. The site of a series of riots in late June, early July 1969 that resulted from a police raid on a Greenwich Village gay bar.
I started working in the Stonewall in 1968 before the riots.
It wasn't, everybody said riot. It wasn't a riot, it was a rebellion.
Because it was illegal to be gay then.
And we had to go in the back door because there was a law stating you're not allowed to serve an alcoholic beverage to a Native American or a non-homosexual in the 50s.
Take my word for it. Those were extremely difficult times to grow up in. And the effects of those times never fully disappear.
So we had to go in the back door. We can go to the front. Now, if I sat this way to talk to him, we got thrown out. I had to look at him and talk to him through a mirror.
We could be put in jail. I think I've been in every jail in Manhattan.
5 minutes, and we were congregating for homosexual purposes.
Right.
Or a cop would walk by you with his nightstick, whack you in the back of the leg, go, come on, girls, move it. We both could run in those days. Now we can't even walk fast.
Stonewall has become synonymous over the years with gay resistance to oppression.
It started out a few people, then it went hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
And they were throwing high heels, the drag queens.
And I was standing there, and there was a cop standing by me, and he turned me around because I had casual male attire on. He spun me around. He said, move. He said, move, faggot. I turned around, and he said, I said, move, and hit me in my eye. Bad mistake.
A cop thought she was a boy, gave her a lot of attitude, and she gave it right back to him.
He was on the ground, I was on him. It took 2 cops to get me off him.
Because afterwards, everybody wound up with broken wrists, broken elbows.
We were told to move, and when I refused to move, a policeman on a horse, chased me, and that's when the photograph was taken.
My mother, Judy Garland, her funeral was June 27th, the exact night of the Stonewall riots. I heard from the people who were there, it was the straw that broke the camel's back, and that's when they said, enough is enough, we're not gonna take it anymore. So, would it have happened if my mom hadn't passed away? I don't know. I don't think any of us can say. All we know is the two coming together makes a lot of sense.
The 1969 riots are now generally taken to mark the birth of the modern gay and lesbian political movement.
I thought it was maybe some little local ruckus. I certainly didn't know history was happening.
I had an idea that this was a beginning. This was the beginning of something that was going to be much bigger, you know, than
even 2 years later.
We had to have our rights. It was time, and I think that's what we all felt that evening because the energy was so high, and we were fighting for our rights.
The riots themselves were almost instantaneous in terms of the effect they had on gay people's consciousness. It was almost as if we were waiting for that spark to come, to ignite something, and ignited it did. Not only here in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Atlanta, you name it. Slowly, it was like a prairie fire had been ignited by that event.
So in June 1970, all the gay groups organized together, and people had meetings and decided to get together and make ourselves as public as we could. This was the first gay pride march. There were smatters of gigglings, but they were quickly stifled. We were a few too many to offend. The spectators' faces showed amazement, confusion, shock, resignation, unconcern, affirmation. Ours showed 2 emotions, pride and determination. We were coming out of our closets, however many of us could, but we were coming out together. At 42nd Street, a stern-faced Bible thumper held aloft a sign that warned Sodom and Gomorrah. When we got to the entrance of Central Park, in a river that seemed endless, poured wave after wave of happy faces. The gay nation was coming out into the light. There was hardly a dry eye on that hill. What had begun as a few hardy hundred had swollen all along its route until we filled half the huge meadow with what the networks and newspapers estimated as 5,000 to 15,000 people, all gay and proud of it.
Thought this would be great here for Los Angeles to also organize a march like that. And we were going to do it on Hollywood Boulevard, and we needed to get a police permit to do it. Chief of Police Ed Davis refused to give us a permit. He said, we will not give a permit for a parade to perverts, is the word that he used. The ACLU stepped in, and so on the last Sunday in June, we weren't sure what was going to happen. The Gay Liberation Front made a giant papier-mâché jar of Vaseline, and we pulled a jar of Vaseline down Hollywood Boulevard, and it's never been the same. People lined the streets, and they couldn't believe it was happening. We were marching for our freedom. We were marching for our liberation. It wasn't party time. It was really serious business. I mean, it's always been defiant. I mean, we as gay people had to be defiant.
I was living in Washington, D.C. in the early 70s, just around Stonewall, and everybody had heard about this. These reports had come in about the first march, the first gay pride march that had happened in New York. It was a very exciting moment. I just remember coming up in the car and all just excited, and we get out, and then you see the throngs of people and the excitement of just screaming those chants, things like, you know, out of the closets and into the streets. It really had meaning. And we really felt like we were going to change the world. And we did.
But I do remember that it was an empowerment thing. There was this feeling, it was a time in history where we were coming into our own. We were becoming a political group like the blacks had, the women's movement, and it was this great empowering feeling. That I remember.
Well, long before I was a state senator, I was just an average gay guy that marched in the Gay Pride March. And the earliest times that I remember marching, 76, 77, 78, it was all I could do to not cry. In fact, I still feel that way about it. You know, I was an Irish kid from Queens, from a very conservative family in a very conservative neighborhood. I was the only gay person I knew. I just remember stepping into the crowd and looking around and just feeling like I was home. By being able to celebrate gay pride through these many years, I really have built up my self-esteem, and it really has helped me, and I think it's made me the person that I am today.
I don't want praise, I don't want pity. I'll bang my own drum. Some think it's noise, I think it's pretty.
I'm New York State Senator Tom Duane.
I'm Marty Duberman, the author of Stonewall.
I'm Mark Thompson, author of Long Road to Freedom.
Malcolm Boyd.
I'm Lorna Luft, and you're watching Here with Pride on Here.
I'm out there every year reconnecting with this community because I'm part of it, and I'll never forget the first time when I really felt connected to something. When you're first coming out, you want to reach out to someone who'll say, hey, you belong, you're part of our community. And on Gay Pride, that's the day you really feel that at the most extreme level. Because if there isn't something in that parade that you can relate to, you really better just go straight again.
Every year now, since I am a straight woman, I start planning Gay Pride 6 months beforehand, and I even plan my vacations around it. I cannot go on vacation during that week because I will just be so upset if I miss this one day. I made a lot of friends. I found my hairdresser that way.
So the first Pride that I've ever went to was the Pride that I remember the most. It was on my 20th birthday, and it was New York City Pride of 2001. And I had spent a significant amount of time protecting myself from ever coming out. When I had gone to this event, the amount of people had reassured me that whatever I was thinking, that whatever I was feeling, was certainly not wrong. I actually found my journal from that time, and I had written a little excerpt, and I said, I swear it was so powerful, the energy, the happiness, the pride, that I began crying. thinking what a mountain I've climbed, what an obstacle I've overcome. And with that, life became so beautiful and so real. I began to cry out of sheer triumph and happiness, and I said to myself, remember this always. This is your birthday. This is your 20th birthday.
So I found out about the gay parade and ventured up there by myself, 17, and I was so nervous and I just didn't know what to expect, you know. The only way that I considered myself visible was putting a rainbow sticker on my car. But I rolled up there and just, it was like Oz. It was a new land. I can't even, it was like finding my family that I never knew I had and not being the other. And also seeing other Asian lesbians was truly like remarkable because I didn't even know they existed. I thought I was the only one. Also black lesbians, Latina lesbians, and you know, I just never knew, and I was so overwhelmed. And took a seat there with the program, and I took a look there, and it said, Dykes on Bikes. Well, where's the fags on stags? You know, like, what is this?
And here down Fifth Avenue came these shirtless women with all their breasts hanging out on these motorcycles, holding this sign that said, Dykes with Bikes. And I have to say, I didn't know it then, but having the perspective of over a decade to look back on it and the maturity, at that moment, my focus began to shift from defending who I was to embracing who I am.
And it just broke me. It just broke me. And I look back and metaphorically what they were saying to me was, get out of the way, we're lesbians. Girl, rev your engine, you know, and fly. And also they taught me, you know, you can be fierce. This is fierce. And then, of course, the drag queens came out, and they're like, girl, you can be fierce, but you can also be fabulous.
And then this float full of drag queens comes by, and my father's looking.
Well, I was on a float with 9 people dressed up as my mother. And then behind the float, there were 75 Judy Garlands, all doing Get Happy, all in the tuxedo and the hat.
He's looking and he's looking and he says, Mark, let me ask you a question. I said, sure. And he goes, I thought lesbians didn't make themselves up to be so pretty, but those women are really, really gorgeous.
Beautiful, beautiful women that I was very much attracted to and realizing that they were drag queens, which was awesome.
And at first I thought I was on acid.
I'm like, Dad, those are guys. They're drag queens. He's like, those are guys? And my mother looks at him and she slaps him on the arm and she goes, oh, Herb, please, just look at their Adam's apples in their hands. You can tell in a heartbeat.
And they were great, and they were so sweet, and they were wonderful. And it's odd, okay? It is very odd to see someone dressed up as your mother, but I've gotten used to it.
And then PFLAG marches by. And I knew they'd want to sit down, and this was my plan. I knew they'd want to sit down. So I figured I can enroll them in working at the PFLAG table in exchange for a place to sit for an hour or two. And there was a really touching moment. I saw my father talking to a young man who apparently had just figured out what PFLAG was. He'd never heard of them. And he looks up at my father. My father didn't know that I was a few feet away. And he says, so you have a gay son? And my father goes, yeah. And I watched my father kind of work through being asked that. And he said, yeah. And then he looks up and he sees me out of the corner of his eye. And he points me out and he says, and that's him. And he just like had this pride when he said it. And so I went over and I gave him a hug. And then I took this wonderful picture of the 3 of us, me and my parents, standing there together at the PFLAG table.
And my dad came into New York to see me, and it just happened to coincide with Pride Week. And we went to the Pride Parade together. And he said to me that he really enjoyed it and it was really fun, but it was too bad that it wasn't a little less, I can't remember the exact words he said, but something to the effect of a little less risque or a little more proper, something to that effect. And I got really, really emotional. I got really angry. And very intensely I said to him, this parade is for me. It's not for you. We're here because we're proud of who we are. We're not here to make you happy with who we are. And I realized that that, for me, I think was the beginning of really not only being proud of who I am, but also sort of taking a political stance about it.
Long before I became mayor of the city of West Hollywood, I remember my first Pride celebration. It was 1980. I never would have envisioned I'd actually be riding in the parade or being recognized for anything. Everybody's getting the same level of enthusiasm, and that's the exciting part. And you know what else I find sort of interesting and exciting at the same time are the protesters, because, you know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, there were hundreds of them. Now, it's the same 6 guys. I even know 2 of them by name, Bob and Joe. You know, so every year it's like, hey, Bob, hey, Joe, good to see you every year.
There were people there with signs, big, huge signs. There were vans with music and talking about sodomite and sins, and we were gonna all die from AIDS, and people did throw Bibles at us. But that was okay, because what we did was in return, we picked up those Bibles and said, do not throw God's word like this.
I became a police officer in July 1985, and in New York City. And when I went to the gay parade in 1986, as a police officer working, I knew I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to feel everything that everyone else was feeling, but I was restricted because I was in uniform. There was a lot of fear, but I figured in my heart, you know, I'm gay. I know I'm gay. I've been gay all my life, as long as I can remember. So this is what I feel I need to do. So when June came, I asked for the day off, and I marched. And I marched with another young person, a woman, a lesbian. A lot of the cops turned their back on us. They did not give us, you know, the respect as they give to the young people today. And now looking back, I feel I did something for the police officer of today by myself and this other young woman coming forward. The young police officers of today can basically stand on our shoulders. From that day, from that Sunday on, that's when my life started. All the goodness that came from that point on started from that actual parade.
As a band member in the Pride events, the thing that I love the most is we're marching down the street, and as the band starts to approach, the crowd just jumps up on their feet, they start clapping, and they just go crazy, because it's not a parade without a band.
You know, I think what Pride means to me is the ability to be who I am all the time, and not just one day a year. And I think Gay Pride is the reaffirmation of that every year in my life.
And no matter what our current political environment exists, we are here, we are normal, we are strong, and we are not going anywhere. That's what Pride means to me.
The Gay Pride Parade of 1978 was the largest parade or demonstration or political assembly in the history of the United States that year. Only the media, of course, failed to announce that. But there was Harvey, and I met him for the last time there in the Civic Hall, you know, the big plaza in front of the Dome. And it was kind of a gray and overcast day, and I was sort of gloomy and in the dumps. I don't know why. But there comes my friend Harvey, and he says, "Mark, what's wrong? Why are you so, you know, not so gay on Gay Pride Day?" And I said, "I don't know what it is, the weather, you know." And he said, "Look, he said, do you see this?" He said, "Have you ever seen a bigger pimple?" And I said, "God, Harvey, no, you know." And he said, "It doesn't make any difference, you know. Live your life. Be happy with who you are. You know, this is a beautiful day and a beautiful moment in all of our lives." And he said, "Just remember that." And off he went into the crowds. And of course, just a few months later, in November, late November of '78, he was assassinated. He was killed by Dan White.
By the early '80s, it got very dark.
And with the plague sort of settling in, it was very important for me to want to go and participate in the parade and to see my friends. We had brunch the morning of, or breakfast the morning of the parade, and I am standing with like 5 friends, and I believe 4 of them are dead now. And at the time, there was a couple who were infected. They did not know it at the time, but it was very important for all of us to go to the parade and just to be a part of it.
And then we had this horrible, horrible crisis in the 80s. And all of a sudden, the drag queens and the Dykes on Bikes and the leather guys took second place to ACT UP, Shanti, Gay Men's Health Crisis, LA. All of it, the whole parade, my memory of it was it became a series of AIDS, and it was very somber. We were all losing. It changed.
There's a 2-minute moment of silence I believe it happens at 2 o'clock during the march, and that's a time for people to remember those they've lost to AIDS, or, it's just basically you're remembering the pioneers and warriors of the LGBT community who have gone before us, basically.
My story about Pride is probably a little different than most, I would assume. It kind of became my pathway for who I am today. It literally was the emancipation of Vicky Ortega. It was a very important moment in my life because where I come from, I don't know if you know what it's like, but I'm half African American, half Latina, and I grew up in the government housing projects here in East LA, and it's not the popular thing to be different. And I kind of already knew I was a little bit different. I didn't know to quite what extent. There's a huge difference between being gay and being transgendered. So it was quite a difficult journey just to get to Pride. On my way there, I just was so scared. It even, it's making me kind of shake right now because I'm trying to remember that. I'm remembering that. And it's just the most frightening thing to go through. And once I arrived, it was an oasis where I could be who I am. And seeing people just being happy, being who they are, and seeing other people such as myself was something that was like, wow. And this was the first time that I went out in public as Vicky.
In 1991, I helped the Gay and Lesbian Center and National Coming Out Day take Dick Sargent, who was Darren #2 on Bewitched, come out of the closet. And a few months after that, I was still doing PR for the Gay Pride Parade, and they came to me and they said, we want Dick Sargent and Elizabeth Montgomery to be the Grand Marshals. Well, I was a little nervous because Elizabeth, I used to do some press for her, but I called myself her suppress agent because Elizabeth said no. I called her and I said, Elizabeth, we have this offer. And she said, of course I'll do it. It's for Dick. And it was just a wonderful thing. So I was very happy and I marched along with them. They were in their car and people went crazy. I mean, people went crazy because these are what we grew up with. This was, before Nickelodeon, and these were our heroes and the courage of these people to do it. And something nobody knows and few people know to this day, the morning of, we had a big earthquake and people were a little iffy and I was like, she's gonna cancel. She didn't cancel. Dick and Elizabeth left the car and they had been, like the rest of us in the crowd, they'd been laughing and crying, and Elizabeth gave me a big hug and she says, I have to rush off. And I said, okay, is everything all right? And she said, well, my mother died last night. And nobody ever knew that, and she was still there.
If you're gay and just coming out and it's your first time and you go and you say, oh my God, look at all these people, they're all like me. There's men, there's women, there's bisexual, there's transgender.
The police are marching and the firemen are marching.
The Indians, the Asians, the lesbians, the gays, and I felt like I finally had found my community and a place where I felt safe to be not only gay, but Puerto Rican and Jewish and every part of me that I feel like I need to express.
My mom always says to me, she says, Jeff, you should always remember where you came from. Never forget that. And I think that being gay, you should never forget where you came from.
When we started in '74, we just wanted to not get fired, be able to live in love with who we wanted. And now all of a sudden we're talking about marriage, adopting children. I mean, these are the last battles of the civil rights movement for gay people.
Last year, we went to Manhattan Pride.
And at first you get kind of nervous and kind of scared, but then you realize like you're here for a more important cause and you're here to like represent, you know, there's only like 5 of us, only 5 kids the first year, but you know, we're representing the millions of kids out there that are alone or sad, and you know, we're here and we're queer.
Sorry.
The parade is June 28th. My 82nd birthday is June 8th. So, with all that, all the paraphernalia and luggage of the 82 years, I will be certainly at the parade this year, laughing and dancing and looking forward to it and loving the diversity. And it's particularly fun for me to kind of look at the younger ones, and they're kind of looking at me, and we're laughing together and dancing together and learning from each other. That's very important.
I am my own special creation. So come take a look, give me the hook or the ovation. It's my world that I wanna have a little pride in. My world is not a place for me to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say, hey world, I am what I am. I am what I am. I don't want praise, I don't want pity. I bang my own drums, some think it's noise, I think it's pretty. So what if I love each feather and each bangle? Why not try to see things from a different angle? Life's not worth a damn till you can say, hey world, I am what I am. I am what I am, and what I am needs no excuses. I deal my own deck, sometimes it's A's, sometimes it's deuces. There's one life, there's no return and no deposit. One life, and it's time to open up your closet. Life's not worth a damn till you can say, hey world, I am what I am.
Pride. Much pride.
Pride.
Pride. Pride.
Pride. Pride!
Pride!